Thanks for joining us on another For Investors, By Investors South Bay podcast. As always, we are proud to be your all-education real estate investment resource without any kind of sales pitch. If you would like to attend one of our meetings in person, we meet the second Wednesday of the month at The Point in El Segundo. You can RSVP at forinvestorsbyinvestors.com/South Bay. To find more investment resources such as blogs and podcasts from other FIBI groups, go to forinvestorsbyinvestors.com and search our library. Now, on to the podcast.
So For Investors by Investors was put together by a couple of full-time investors that were tired of getting that sales pitch each time, the boot camp and the book and tape set, and they wanted to go somewhere where people could get educated and not have that kind of sales pitch. And so that's where FIBI was born, because they wanted a place where people can, learn from each other and network with and develop the relationships you need to do this business, which is the most important thing, right? I mean, being able to actually go through and find the resources everyone has in the room and make money together in different ways. And so that's why Dave and I do this, is because Dave and I became partners of FIBI a couple of years after they started, because we love the concept so much. And just by meeting the people in the room and developing the relationships and finding ways of working with people, we make a ton of money that way. It's all about finding what other people don't even realize they have, whether it's time, which is the most important resource, right? Capital, relationships, finding deals, knowing how to analyze something, knowing about marketing. There's so many different skill sets that you could have to make money in this business. And so, flipping is very much like that as well. And so, everyone here flips properties in different ways, and it can be really valuable. And that's kind of the whole topic tonight, is flipping properties without breaking up your marriage, which is probably one of the hardest things in reality, because as you guys know, money is a big problem in a lot of marriages, and not everybody sees eye to eye. And so it's important to make sure that you're actually focused on the right types of things with your spouse as well, whether it's you're in business with you flipping, or just talking with you about starting to invest in passive investments and things like that. Everybody needs to be on the same page, and everybody has different risk tolerance levels. So, all that being said, we're here to educate as much as you can. Dave's going to talk a little bit about this group and some of our sponsors, and then we'll start into it. And keep in mind, this is a Q&A discussion, so we want to add as much value as we can for you guys. So feel free to ask questions and get that value. Okay.
Thank you, Matt. How you guys doing tonight?
Good. Thank you.
This topic is one that we're always trying to think of what's the creative angle on this, and we really love this particular topic, because how many people here have entertained fixing and flipping a house and wondered whether you wanted to do it with your spouse or not? A couple people, okay. So that's how I started. Was my wife and I? We both quit jobs and we started fixing and flipping houses, and it was the most wonderful time of our lives, but every day we fought for like the first 30 minutes. And then once we kind of got that out of our system, then we had these really fun, blissful days. But it's like thinking about this topic and writing questions. It was, for us, we had to get our fight out of the way, and then everything else seemed to flow. So we're real kind of curious to hear how you guys, what your methodology is. I already see some heads, like, yeah, that's about right. Yeah. So a couple of things about just some logistics in here. First of all, the room over here has a bunch of food and drinks. So during the presentation here, if you want to stand up, go grab some food. Bathrooms up front, the doors are open. Please help yourselves. We also left some room in the back there, because I know there's a lot of people that need to stand. So if you're a stander and you got to take a break and go, get out of the chair and stand for a while, please help yourself. As Matt mentioned, we do not do FIBI for the money. Clearly the $20 to $25 you paid to get in isn't anything we're getting wealthy off of. So to pay for the club, we've got sponsors that help to cover the costs of everything. So I want to introduce a couple of sponsors. Jeff back there with UDirect. They're a self-directed IRA custodian, someone that we've been using for years. So if you have any questions on self-directed IRAs, using your retirement account to invest in real estate or other alternative assets, find Jeff. I think you've got some information up there as well. The Note Assistance Program, and actually Sabrina over here works with these guys. These guys are doing real estate notes. We're doing a panel next month, which I'll talk about in a second. New Western, I don't think anyone's here from New Western. Oh, Matt's here from New Western. Sorry, I'm sitting right up front. How did I miss you? These guys are wholesale, like, to the extreme. So anyone who's looking to getting into the wholesale business or looking to buy properties from wholesalers, come find Matt and hear about their system. They are tech whizzes and really do a great job of finding opportunities, using technology. Walker & Dunlop, Andrew Wessling is a commercial lender. They're one of our sponsors. And then Spira Woodward is a local real estate firm that does a lot of real estate and some business, both litigation and also contract work. So we're extremely thankful to them. It allows us to do this, and it allows you guys to be here for the low price of $20. And one of the things that we always talk about is that, there's so many real estate clubs out there where you can spend, $25,000, $30,000 in these 3-day seminars, and you get mentors. And generally, I think our general feeling is that the less you pay for education in real estate, generally the better, right? Because someone's trying to get that much money out of you. That's their whole business model, is they're just trying to get money out of you, not necessarily help you become a good investor. So as I mentioned, in July, we have a meeting that's basically, it's called Notes, the lifeblood of every deal. We've got Jasmine is going to be speaking. And Natasha. Is it Jasmine or Natasha? Or I think it's just Jasmine, right? I think it's Jasmine. I think it's just Jasmine. One of the partners for these guys is going to be talking. We've also got a couple of other people that are involved in the note business, which, if you think about it, every single deal usually has a note involved somehow, some way. Even tonight, we're going to talk a lot about how these guys use debt to acquire property, and there's somewhere in that deal there's a note. So understanding how notes work is a really critical part for any investor, because it's really hard to do all cash transactions all the time without having any debt on the deal. So that'll be a big part of what we talk about next month. One of the other things that we've been talking about, FIBI's been around for this is year 11, so we've been doing this for 10 years, and we've been thinking about what do we look like moving forward, right? And one of the things that we're working on right now is basically a conference, a 2 to 3 day conference where the whole no sales pitch philosophy will be will basically permeate throughout that whole 2 or 3 day weekend. So kind of keep your eyes and ears open for that. That's something that we're continuing to work on, and we'll have some more information soon. We also want to point out that, we're all up here as investors, right? No one here is an attorney. No one. You guys aren't attorneys, right? No one's an attorney. No one's a financial advisor. Please do not take this information as either legal advice or financial advice. This is purely our perspective as investors. If you've got specific questions about your situation and you want to get some guidance, let us know if you don't have those people in your world, and we'll connect you to people that can give you that kind of advice. And then lastly, once we're done here, this is my Keller Williams office. It's a functional office. The night that we do this, we actually have cleaning crew that has to wait until we're done so they can finish their job. So they clean the entire building, wait for us to be done, and they can clean and they can go. So as soon as we're done with the meeting here, which will be done right at 9 o'clock, we've rented out the patio at North Italia. We've got all kinds of food. It's a cash bar, whatever you want to drink. But all of us will go down to North Italia. It's just right on the other side of the courtyard over here. And honestly, that is the real magic of FIBI. And it's the education is great. It's the networking that you're going to have, right? It's meeting one of these guys that you want to learn more information about. It's meeting one of us where you want to network and learn more about. It might be meeting someone who's on the other side of the room that asks a really interesting question. You're like, wow, I should talk to that person. That's really where the magic of FIBI happens. The quality of investor you become will be directly correlated to the quality of people you become involved with. And it's one of the things that we're most proud about with FIBI is the fact that we feel like we draw a very sophisticated audience, a very sophisticated community. So please don't let this thing in and then just run home. Like, if you do that, you're missing out on I think the most valuable part of FIBI, which is getting a chance to network with each other and learn from each other. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go into the presentation. As Matt mentioned, we do have some questions that we've kind of talked about ahead of time. But this is meant to be a dialogue. We actually have a smaller room tonight. It's summertime. I think we've got our summer crowds here. So if you've got questions, please raise your hand. We'll get to as many questions as we can. If you've got a very specific question about your situation, save that for North Italia after the meeting, just so you know you're not having to share your business with everyone in the room here. Cool? Okay, well, let's go ahead and start. Why don't you guys each do an introduction, 3 to 5 minutes, kind of tell us about how you got started in this and kind of what you guys are doing these days on fixing and flipping.
Take it away. Well, that was a fantastic introduction, David. That was like, it almost sounded rehearsed. It was perfect. I loved it. No. I can tell you guys have been doing it for 10 years because now you got it down, right? Absolutely.
I've been rehearsing for 10 years now.
You've been rehearsing for 10 years? Yeah, you got your 10,000 hours in, right?
Exactly.
Very good. My name is Matt Theriault. This is Mercedes, my wife, and we own and operate Epic Real Estate. And how we got started, do we want to go there? Okay. We have two very different beginnings in how we met up. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent the next 15 years of my life in the music business. And when the digital download came along, it just kind of turned that whole industry upside down. I had to start life over. So right down here in Manhattan Beach at the Rouse, I started over bagging groceries at the age of 34. And I literally went from a 7-figure year to $7 an hour. And the grocery store manager turned out to be one of the most unlikely mentors of all people that I could have met. He said, let's see. He said, I'm trying to make this inside of 3 minutes. So he said, Matt, if you really want your money back, real estate is the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot of creating real wealth. And I was like, wow, the average person. I was feeling far below average at that moment. And I was thinking, if that's the final frontier, I better figure out how this works. So I went home that night and Googled everything real estate and ran across an aunt that was she's the, bless you. She's the number one real estate agent in Seal Beach, had been for 23, 24 years. I hadn't seen her in 15 years and fired off an email to her. The next day I was in real estate school. I became a real estate agent. And so I was an agent for 4 years and then realized, wow, if that guy said this is where all the wealth is, if this is the average or the place, the final frontier, like I'm sitting on the wrong side of the desk. And so I made this commitment, made a large investment in my education. That's how I met Matt. And, made a vow to never never represent somebody else on the purchase or the sale of their property. That I was only going to represent myself. And found this.
By the way, I think Matt and Matt might be the only two people in the history of the world that actually did something with your nouveau riche education. So congratulations.
No, that's where I met Mercedes. I met my wife there, and then I just heard that you guys were participants, and then back here, and there was
you need to take that
Sean.
back, Mr. David.
Yeah, there's a bunch of us.
Can we please strike that from the record? Thank you.
Yeah. So, found this little book. You probably never heard of it. You should write this down. It's a really good book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I just got this concept of how to escape the rat race. This concept, like I just came from this music business where I made a lot of money, but I had to make that money every single month to survive. And I just never understood what passive income was. I mean, I speak English. I know what passive means. I know what income means. But when you put them together and you actually have a formula of how to create it, then, in 3.5 years from reading that book, I was out of the rat race, so to speak. My monthly income it passed my expenses, and just went on from there, and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's where we started Epic Real Estate. And somewhere in there, I met Mercedes. I don't know. You want to tell your story? It was just about the time that I had hit that point where my passive income had exceeded my monthly expenses, and then. I wasn't rich, I wasn't wealthy, but I was independent. I didn't have to work, and that's where it was.
And that's where I met Matt. But that's not where my story started. Actually, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, came here when I was 6, and I didn't speak any English, but I was of that mindset. You go to work, you get a good job, and, that whole thing. And that just never jived with me. But I went to college because that's what I was supposed to do. I got into law school, and I got a full ride, and I studied abroad. And the first day of law school, I was like, holy cow, I hate it. And how am I going to give up a full scholarship? And how am I going to tell my parents that I'm not going to do it? So I did the next best thing. I figured out how to stay in Spain with my degree. And And I, wrote my papers in English. I had them translated, and long and behold, I was like, I'm coming back. So I wrote it a year. I came back here, and I went to my friend who was working at Countrywide. I said, I don't know what Countrywide is, but you're the only one that has a job, so get me a job. So she got me a job at Countrywide, and because I was bilingual, the subprime market was hiring. And I made it to the subprime world. And so I started at the bottom. I mean, I was drawing docs on DOS. You guys remember DOS? Yeah, that was me. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it took me like a month to figure out, wait a minute, I'm doing loans for teachers and for like garbage picker-uppers, like all kinds of people that were like, and I couldn't figure out. I was like, well, if I'm only making at the time, it was, $40,000 a year, and they're cashing out on one refi that they just bought 6 months ago, $180,000. Like, why can't I do that? So I started to learn it really, really well. And within a year, I was like, okay, I'm a W-2 employee. I have tax returns. I qualify. Because back in the day, anyone that could breathe was qualifying for a subprime loan. And of course...
Especially at Countrywide.
So I did the next best thing. I became really good friends with my boss, and I bought my first house, owner-occupied, of course, and it was a flip. So I was making $40,000 a year.
You're going to delete that on the...
No, it's all out there. And I did what you're supposed to do. My bank statements were going there because I was living there. And, the tax, everything was legit because I was living there. And then I flipped it within 3 months. And my first flip, I made $122,000. Of course, it was here in LA. And it was during the prime of the market. And I was like, bingo. So I kept working there because I was a W-2 employee and because I needed to do it. But it just taught me, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And then the market crashed. And I was like, oh, I really don't know how to flip. I just rode the wave. And so I joined Nouveau Riche. And that's where I met this wonderful man. And I would laugh at him because he started doing flips and he would do a lot of holding. And I was like, why do you want to hold that property? What's this passive income thing? Like, I spoke English too. I understood passive and income. But I like the flips. So that's kind of how we got started. And then I rode the short sale wave. I did 24 fix and flips in 1 year. I was on a show called Flip That House, and then we started Epic Real Estate. So now I continue to flip for our passive investors.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Great intro. That sounded rehearsed, by the way. Have you guys been rehearsing that?
10 years, buddy.
10 years. Cool. Janet and Larry, which, by the way, these guys also run a real estate investment club, a FIBI, out in Coachella Valley. If you're ever out in Palm Springs, there are, we have 6 active chapters right now. So if you're out in Palm Springs and I could really go for some real estate education, they are your crew.
Heat now.
Yeah, heat.
Lots
right.
of sun and lots of heat. Larry and I met when we were 21 and actually have been together now more than half of our lives. It's kind of scary. But we did a lot of different kinds of businesses. We were of the mindset that we wanted to try out a lot of different entrepreneurial things. My parents were teachers. I knew that was definitely not my path. And so we bounced about. I had a gourmet foods company after I went to culinary school, and we did web design. And then I was all excited because kind of like you, where you start the next day at a new job, my friend owned a mortgage company. So I went to work at a mortgage company in 2003. And rode that wave, bought into half of the company, and by 2007, making great money. It was wonderful. We started buying real estate the wrong way. And then in 2008-9, when it was just too difficult to do loans, I got so frustrated because here I am working, and I was never the decision maker, ever. I always was the messenger. I had to tell the borrower why they weren't qualified or, give me another 100 pages of your bank statements or whatever it was. I just said, this is enough. I'm sick of this. So we wanted to create passive income. We said we need to create a business or do a business where we're in control, where we don't have bosses, and we can build our investment portfolio so we can do whatever we want, which was travel. So for flipping, we did flipping because that made money. But our primary goal was in buying income property. So we'll talk about that and how we got out to the desert a little bit later, but that's a brief overview of where where we're at.
Perfect.
You want to talk?
Sure. You guys are, I love your intros. You guys are amazing. My dad is an immigrant from Scotland. He grew up in the ghettos there in Scotland, and he came over here, and it was always very entrepreneurial. You come here because the streets are paved in gold. And to have a job, if you have a job, you're kind of a loser. Like, he still gives my brother Static, who works as a school psychologist, and my sister and I run our own business, so we're the ones who are seen in better light than my brother. So I had that built in from the start. So I was never going to be a job person. You'll meet people who are comfortable in some family cultures, like we're job people. And that's not where I came from. He invested in real estate in the 70s, and I got to see how to do it wrong. So we figured it out after. One great thing about being with Janet is we've been able to support each other in our own businesses at times when we've really needed it. She started a gourmet foods company, and it's a very, very difficult business. We found out margins are real tiny. It's almost impossible to get shelf space at Ralph's or the supermarket. But I was making money, and I supported her. I started a web development company. I wasn't making any money. It was hard to find clients. She supported me with her mortgage business. And then finally, both of our businesses happened to melt down at the same time, so we had to work together. And so that's how we ended up starting investing. We started investing in 2000. We invested wrong 2004, 5, and 6. We invested correctly starting in 2007. We did our first flip in 2007. We started buying investment rentals in 2008, and we probably bought our last rental. All our stuff's in Palm Springs area. We probably bought our last rental there to keep. Was it last? We bought one last year? Do you recall? We bought 1 or 2 last year. Market conditions have changed, so it makes it harder to find cash flow properties there. But our goal has always been to keep as many as we can and only flip to make chunks of money to pay our bills as we're collecting the assets that'll take care of us for the rest of our lives.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Excited to have you guys here. Thank you. My name is David Coe. I am a realtor. This is my Keller Williams office here. We specialize in South Bay real estate, specifically dealing with distress. We've got a client right now who's looking to sell their house, who's going through a divorce. There's a retaining order, and they're trying to evict their 2 grown children out of the home. Wow. So that's us. We love that stuff. It's fantastic. As an investor, I've also done everything from fixing and flipping, running a note fund. I'm involved in some new construction right now out in North Hollywood. So anyone that wants to have a conversation on real estate investing at a high level, please find me at the end of this. Would love to find some time to chat with you.
Thank you very much. My name is Matthew Owens. I'm a California licensed CPA, and no, I will not do your taxes. My mom was doing them for me in the back. Mom, raise your hand. My mom is here. But she won't do your taxes anymore either because she's retired now. So she won't do them. I'm a full-time flipper, and I basically flip about 5 to 10 houses a month. We've flipped over 700 now in the last 10 years. Or 10 plus years now. We do a lot of value-add multifamilies. We do we invest in different syndicated investments. We lend capital to other flippers. We have a short-term rental business, and then we help run the FIBI nonprofit here and just try to teach financial education and help people any way we can. So it's a lot more fun than doing the accounting stuff, wanting to shoot myself doing other people's taxes. So you know how hard it is to get people to give you their information? Someone one time gave me an entire trash bag full of receipts. And I was like, I'll go through it for 10 grand for you right now. And even now, I would not do that now. I wouldn't, for 10 grand, I wouldn't do it. But that being said, let's go ahead and get into some of the questions. I got a unique one for the wives here. When you guys have an argument about something to do with real estate, does the wife always win, like in the marital arguments?
Yes.
Is that the case? Or is there actually some pushback or more pushback than a normal argument?
I'd have to say our situation is that, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. And Matt's strengths are my weaknesses. So our business from the get-go have purposely never overlapped. He does one part of the business, I do another. His office is downstairs, mine is upstairs, and we drive separately to work. So that's what saved our marriage. But honestly speaking, our business has been up and running for 10 years, and we've been together just as long. So arguments, there are very little, because we don't commingle that part of our business.
Matt's just really easygoing, and he's like, whatever you want, Mercedes, whatever you want.
No, I messed up my relationships 2 times before I met Mercedes, so I know what not to do now, right? And no, but really, it's like, I think what it's worked is we're just on the same page. We just see eye to eye. We very rarely disagree about. I don't know if we ever disagree about anything real estate.
What would you guys say some of the skill sets you have that she doesn't and she has that you don't? What makes that mesh work?
To make it really simple, I got a bunch of ideas and I love to start stuff. She's really good at
I take the ball and run.
She's like...
She completes. Yeah, she takes it across the goal line. Totally. That's probably how we complement ourselves each other.
So you're a dreamer, she's a doer.
Exactly, yes. Every dreamer has to find a doer to validate yourself, yes.
I'm a really good doer, though.
Nice. Larry, Janet?
So I don't mean to hitchhike on that, but I think that's probably why it works. We actually don't fight very often, but I am not the one in the relationship who wins. I'm just going to say that right now, because he'll drive his point home until I just go, okay, fine, whatever. I'm not going to even discuss this any longer. In fact, we discussed this question in the car on the way home, and I'm like, see, you're doing it right now. Forget it. You're right. You win. But
that's not it.
Here it is. No, but seriously, I think we might be doing it wrong, because we literally work side by side every day in the same room. But it works, and that's probably why we have a successful marriage and relationship, because we don't fight, and we have a little bit of overlap for sure, but generally I keep Larry on the phone. He's the yacker. He loves to talk to people, and I am not at all. I prefer to text and email any day of the week, and I'm the one that does the systems and the paperwork and the taxes, because I love that part, and all of those things. So it's different roles, and that's how we manage it.
And how do you deal with it when one of you guys makes a mistake and loses money on a deal? It's happened, obviously. Everyone makes mistakes, but...
Yeah, no, and of course it's going to happen. It happens with every partnership, right? But in the end, we don't get mad about it, because our goals are the exact same goals for the same family, the same bank account. So everybody makes mistakes, and it's going to happen.
It feels like we have a hive mind, right? I already know what she's thinking, and vice versa. So that helps it. We run a club, right, in Palm Springs area. So on our club thing, it says Janet and Larry. We flip houses, and it tells us a little bit about it. That's attracted producers who've called and said, hey, we're interested in producing a show about a couple that flips houses. And we resisted that for years. We'd get those calls. And I remember getting my hair cut, and there was a People magazine with Targ and the blonde, Christine, and what was the other one? Like a Time or some other magazine that had the Property Brother guys on it. And I looked at those guys, and I'm thinking, these guys are world famous. If I've got producers maybe interested in chatting with us to maybe give us that opportunity, I need to get over myself and stop worrying about being on Facebook and what people might tag on my photo, and call these people back. And we called them back, and they gave us a phone interview. And at the end of the phone interview, they're like, well, thank you guys for chatting with us. We'll reach out. We'll reach out.
Don't call us. We'll call you.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's no when to survive and just to be able to live together. There is no drama. The drama is such a waste of time. It is so boring. Really, drama is so boring. How can people do that? It's so much more fun to talk about ideas and new businesses and thoughts and new ways to structure stuff than fight about. I maybe forgot the toolbox at a place, and now I had $900 worth of tools or something stupid like that. We both have the same heart and the same goals. We have, so that helps.
Can I interject? This is so spooky, because we live in Glendale, and we've been on the freeway for the last 3 hours. And we were just talking about some friends of ours who have a big time show like this in Atlanta. And we were just like, Now I can't say what I was going to say because now you know who he is. All right, so we'll rewind. We'll pull that fish back in. All right, I almost rung that bell. All right, so no, they're great people. I wasn't going to say anything negative against him, but in the sense that what they just said, we've been on 2 or 3 of these Skype interviews for the same purpose, and we just got along. We weren't exciting to them. We're just like, just what you said. And we were coming down here on the freeway. It's like, we should have just played it up. We should have just been like gnawing and kicking and scratching each other on the thing. But it was funny. That just happened 30 minutes ago.
Feel free to start tonight. That'll make for some really interesting video.
We could be world famous if we just punched each other in the middle of that interview.
Even if it's fake, it might be entertaining, depending on how crazy you guys get.
It's true. Ironically, I did do a show, Flip That House, pre-Matt. And, my personality is I'm always happy, but when I'm Puerto Rican, man, when I get mad, I get mad. And so my contractor messed up the kitchen. And I went in there, and of course, my contractors all speak Spanish, so I just went off in Spanish. And the producers are like, no, Mercedes, do it again. I was like, I can't do it again. I only get mad once, But they wanted me to come back and do another, and they offered me a series, but back then I was so dumb, but I didn't because they were taking too much of my time and they were costing me money. So I did 2 flips with them. One actually aired, and they called me and said, your episode was one of the highest rated. And I was like, I don't care. You didn't help me make money. So, duh. Now, if it was today, I'd probably have a different attitude. But
you'd have you'd have half the products in Target with your name on it or something.
That's true.
So one thing I want to point out is, Janet, you mentioned something I think it's worth it. You said, well, we must do it. We must do it wrong because you do it different than these guys because you work together, they work separately. I think it's important for everyone to understand there is no right or wrong way to do this type of thing. That's part of the journey of becoming self-employed, because that's really what we all are. We're all entrepreneurs. It's finding what's the right way to work for you. So over the course of the night, clearly there's going to be some things that everyone agrees upon. They may do some things differently. It doesn't mean one's doing it right, one's doing it wrong. They just found a way to do it for themselves, which I think is one of the important things about this. Also, I think it's interesting. When Janet walked in, Janet came in this door, and I guess Larry came in this door. And I saw Janet come in, and I didn't see Larry. And I'm like, I had this look of terror in my eyes. And she's like, yeah, we broke up this morning. And I was like, oh, of course that happens on the...
Good for you.
It was good.
Oh, sorry, I have those smart locks.
Yeah. It's actually very funny.
Yeah, it's good.
So our business is in Palm Springs area, so we have a house there, and then we have a house on the coast. So the way we survive is I go live there for 3 days a week, every other week or so, by myself, and I can't get out the door of the coastal house fast enough for her.
I'm like, you are not coming home early, period.
I want to come home. I'm starving.
I'm starving and I'm sweating. Can I please come back to the beach? All right, so actually, I'm going to start with Larry with you, since you got the microphone in your hand. Next question is, I'm curious to know, what are the things that you like more about working together than if you had to do this on your own? What are some of the biggest advantages you find in being in a team like this versus being on your own?
Super easy. We've seen a lot of colleagues that have had partners, and partners usually don't seem to last more than 10 years. And we're on 29 together, and I know that the word trust is never a concern. There's no, she's got, whatever she does is for my interest. Whatever I do, she knows is for her interest. So it's so easy. Instantly, I know whatever decision she's made, I don't know. Well, I'll ask her, what'd you decide? But there's no concern.
By the way, she cut your ass about an hour ago, so be careful about that lie.
You don't have to go that far.
So that's from a high-level perspective, but from a day-to-day, and maybe Janet, you can talk about this. On a day-to-day, what are some of the advantages in having a partner versus doing this on your own? What do you see some of the biggest advantages?
Well, it's definitely our strengths. So I will do lots of things that Larry has no interest or desire to do, which is wonderful because we can run our business where I'm completely focusing on systems and finances and creating all the documents and taxes. And I pretty much run all our escrows and whatnot, whatever you want to call it. And Larry, transaction coordinator, I guess. And then Larry's very good at talking to people, talking to contractors. He loves to be creative thinking and figuring out how we can do a deal differently. And we certainly collaborate on that, but he usually runs with that part of it, and he's really, really good at talking to people, contractors, or whoever we're working with, especially if something didn't go right. He's really good at talking to them about getting them to understand and admit that they did it wrong. And I don't mean wrong in like a bad, negative way, but then bringing them up at the end and having them reach to a higher level. He's so good at that. So we definitely have our different strengths. And I know that part's covered. I don't have to think about it or worry about it because he handles it, and vice versa.
I think that's probably one of the most important things when you're doing a flip, is being able to communicate with your team effectively, because there's so many things to go wrong, and your success is going to be able to be determined by how you handle those problems that come up and how you can solve them. You know, are you putting your head in the sand, or are you trying to go out and communicate those issues correctly to your team to get the item solved and keep moving that forward? It's so hard to do it sometimes. You have so many problems that come up. Every single deal has something just that comes up with it. It's pretty amazing that it's literally every deal that something happens. It never goes through smoothly. So,
well, right, and just to add on to that, one of the very first things that we did when we started working was, and this is so elementary, but it was just checklists. And every time we're like, oh, we forgot that, and we add it to the checklist. And we always carried around with that, like a folder, literally, with a checklist. And I learned that from my mortgage business from
You'd have a file.
Yeah,
so
from that McDonald's book. I can't remember the name of the McDonald's book. Anyway, so now it was always putting all of our stuff remotely, so you can access it when you're out in the field. And now I'm all about making sure we hit every single point in a transaction, so you have less of the issues, and communicating that way. Now we just moved our system last year to Podio, so it's always developing and making it a little bit more simple and streamlined, which allows us to it's just me, Larry, and an assistant. This is our whole business.
I love that idea. Actually, I'll give Matt credit here. I mean, like he said, he's doing 5 to 10 properties a month. If you don't have systems in place, like, your world just goes crazy. And I think it's important that if you're not good at creating systems, you've got to find someone in your world that is. Mercedes, I'm guessing you're the checklist person in this relationship. Is that about right?
I am, because he created an amazing system. So everything that we do, it does have a system. And, we're not alone. I have a lot of assistants. I have a lot of help. And then I have, different markets, and I have different teams in each market. And those teams are on our system. And it's all because he created a system.
I dreamed them up.
That's awesome. I'm just sitting here amazed right now. Like, I keep shaking my head because Dave actually gave me credit for something in my life. I'm like, wow, that actually just happened. I think it's like the first time ever. This is pretty awesome, So he gives me credit for being too white, but that doesn't really count. But
by the way, I have attracted all of the light off of Matt. That's why I always call him, it's like my negative image. I'm almost like a piece of film in Matt's world.
Awesome. So back to the discussion really quick after the sidetrack. Matt and Mercedes, you guys, I learned a lot from you guys over the years, and, just talking with you guys and understanding, some of the technologies and systems that you guys have deployed to do this. I know there's different systems for each, for acquisitions, for rehab, for, property management, for managing investors. From, the hardest part, at least in everybody's mind right now in California, is how to find the deals. What kind of systems and, marketing strategies do you guys use to bring that deal flow on and keep that going? And what is that like sales engine system look like? Just kind of a brief overview of that sales system and the marketing system that goes into it. Sure.
All right. So, just to prove that I'm not just a dreamer.
Nice.
I handle that side of it. So I'm acquisitions all the way to finding the deal, to negotiating it, to running all the way through contract to close. Once I close, then Mercedes takes over and starts fixing it up and gets it ready to resell. So I would say our number one source of deals right now, and we have no shortage of deals, is our relationships. We started early, before I even knew what really marketing was. So we kind of did it accidentally in the beginning, but it was probably, in hindsight, it was the best thing that we could have done. real estate is a people business, and every piece of real estate you buy or sell is going to be from or to another person. And I don't care how you meet that person. It's going to be people. It's going to be relationships. And so that's where we get most of our deals. But we do direct mail. We do pay-per-click. We have 4 amazing Facebook strategies that are working really well for us nationwide. And then we got a network of wholesalers, but those will be relationships. The relationships is most of it.
Is that mostly with wholesalers? I mean, how do you have because usually you deal with
Well, if we want to go back and revisit this conversation again with Nouveau Riche, this was an opportunity that we had, and it was just such an amazing one. I don't know if it was good. We knew it was good, but in hindsight, I don't realize, we might have even underestimated how good it actually was. Because it was a big education program that went for 2 years. You met once a quarter in Arizona, but people from all over the United States that were members of this program came there, right? And so that's how we were able to build our markets in 10 different markets, or how to build our business in 10 different markets, is that we just had business cards and relationships, and what you're talking about, like what happens after the party. We've had lots of drinks and lots of excitement after the school that just created, it's almost like a fraternity. And so we could just call any team, say, hey, we've got a buyer just came through our website, and they want 3 properties. They got a cash flow at least this much, and they want at least a 10% cash-on-cash return. They've got this much to put down, and I need 3 of those. And in 24 hours, they show up, right? And so it really has gotten to be that simple for us. And it's just, and when they come to Mercedes, sometimes they come pre-rehab without me having to even find them. And they come to her, and the relationships are so good, she'll get a whole week of exclusivity, like that, because of those relationships. So I wish it was something trickier and fancier and more technological, but it's just
if you really think about
relationships.
it, the relationships over the last 10 plus years is what got you to the point where you're getting a ton of deals from those relationships, and then you're also doing the pay-by-click and the direct mail piece as well, which, the sales system is something people don't talk about with that piece, the actual talking to homeowners, like what Larry is talking about being good at, right. Talking to the actual people getting out there. They talk about, get the phone ringing, right. But after the phone rings, what happens?
Got it.
How do you track that stuff too? Because that's the most important part, of the tracking.
So we've got a CRM that comes through, and all the phone system is integrated, text servicing is integrated, the email service is integrated, the follow-ups all automated. But it comes through, and it's understanding, I think, putting yourself in the idea that the person that's calling you is calling you because they have some sort of problem. And they're a little bit fearful of their situation. They're in some sort of distress. And you just have to understand that people's fear, it shows up in different ways. It shows up in anger. It shows up in hostility. It shows up in just, I need someone to talk to. It shows up, I'm not that interested, but I'm just going to see what you got to say. It shows up with like a smart-ass attitude. Like, it shows up in all these different ways. So if you just kind of like, okay, this is an interesting negotiating position they began with. Like, that's kind of what I do, whatever they say. And then it's all about an interview process. We call it the seller interview. And it's like, I don't even know if I can help you. Let me ask you some questions, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. I can't buy them all, but you know what? If I can help you, this is the other thing that we do pretty well, is we align ourselves with the seller and make the market the bad guy. You know what? They say, well, I'm not going to sell for less than $100,000. And I was like, okay, I'd be happy to give you $100,000. If the market allows me to do it, I'll certainly give it to you. Let's go ahead and see if that can happen. Right? So I just make the market the bad guy. The market's the only thing that's going to get in the way of us doing a deal and getting you out of your situation. So that's how that conversation begins. That's the whole framework of the conversation. I think the other big thing that we do, we use something called transition agreements, where we're always setting the expectation. Okay, so great. I got all the information that I needed. Then I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm going to call you back, and then I'm going to set an appointment to come out and see the property if everything checked out. I just want you to know that if at any moment you feel that this is not a good fit and you're feeling uncomfortable with this, will you be okay telling me no? Just say stop. Okay, so we give them the permission to say no. And then I go, okay, I just want you to know if I come across anything that's not going to make a deal for me, I'm going to say the same thing, okay? Is that fair? Oh, totally fair. Yeah, come on out. Yeah. And now they're in a position where
It takes away the whole scare.
they don't feel like someone's coming out to steal their house. They don't feel like someone's going to undercut them. They know the market is the bad guy. I want to stay with Matt because he's going to help me out and beat this big old bad market. And so that's how that whole conversation goes. And, you get thank yous for buying properties at deep discounts. You get pats on the back. You get referrals when you do it that way. And we're genuinely interested. I mean, we generally want to help because we know our whole philosophy is that sellers will exchange equity for peace of mind. So our whole object is just to give them peace of mind for whatever they're dealing with.
I just wanted to add that Matt mentioned a $100,000 price point. Our markets are in the Midwest and in the South. For those of you that don't understand, most of our markets our price points are $80,000 to about $150,000, and so that's why we said $100,000.
And you guys talked a lot about the some of the specific strategic things you say on the phone to get that wall down, that barrier down, and things like that. This is a science. I mean, it's an art too. I mean, you're going through and getting there's education that you can do to become a better salesperson for this process, and understanding some of these different things. One of the things that I got out of Matt's last class is you wrote down a list of here's all the different ways that you can help a homeowner, whether it's moving costs or waiting until they move out or leasing the property back from them or helping them with repairs, or there's a list of I literally wrote every one of them down and started training people on that same thing. And so, and then also here's a list of all the different connectors, all the people, whether it's a CPA or attorney or a contractor or whoever the heck it is that are connectors to properties and people with distress. That was ridiculously valuable. And I think that's the mentality. There's plenty of deals out there. It's a matter of putting the right strategies in place and staying consistent with those strategies over time.
Also, there's a lot of wholesalers out there, and there's a lot of bird dogs out there. And if they know that you're going to buy, I know that I'm first choice for probably 80% of the deals because they know that they're going to send it to me and I will respond within 24 hours. And we've gotten so good at it that we know if it's going to be a deal from the get-go. Right. So, we operate in volume and that helps, and we operate fast. So, once you establish that and you create that relationship with that bird dog or that wholesaler, trust me, you will get more deals than you can ever handle.
You close escrow every time for them, and they're
the conveying the certainty of close can't be overestimated. Like that's just people just want to know you're going to follow through, and that goes with your referrals, that goes with your sellers, it goes with your buyers. Like they want to work with you because they know it's actually going to happen.
It's 40% plus don't.
Right.
Right.
Larry, Janet, how are you guys finding deals right now, or what are you guys focused on, and what are the different strategies you've used in the past to find your flip deals?
So when you guys are talking, it's so cool to me that you can do this business in so many different ways, and it really starts from what your goal is. And if you don't know what your goal is, it's going to be really hard to get there and focus in on what's going to get you there the quickest. So when I was saying I quit my mortgage company and we wanted passive income, we flipped because we had to, because we needed chunks of money. Our whole goal was to buy rental property. And lucky for us that we started buying in 2009. And the properties we were buying, we went to the desert because they cash flowed really well. We were buying our houses for, $70,000 to $90,000. And these are houses that are going for $200,000-$300,000 now out there. It's a little obviously different than here, but same ratios. So we also took over the club out there. So the way that we've been marketing, we are very sporadic about it as far as sending postcards. We don't track anything, so we're not great about that, but we're still reaching our goals. So it's true. It is relationships. So we had our club. We've been out there so long now. We know the agents out there. We work with wholesalers. We love wholesalers. And I think one of the main things that really helped us in the downturn is, like you were saying, we never made an offer ever on a property unless we saw it first. And if we made an offer, we would close, period. Now, unless there was some major, issue that came up, which actually has never happened, we always close. We don't back out of deals, and that really gets your reputation strong. And we're pretty conservative, so we look at our numbers and we know what we want to make on it, And I don't know if that's completely answering your question. So we do a little bit of marketing here and there, but it's definitely relationships. We aren't buying a lot right now because we're restructuring our business so that we can start traveling and doing more of this stuff remotely. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
And that's important to understand. I mean, when you're investing in real estate, to understand that, hey, you need to be holding and initially flipping to gain that capital to get to your passive cash flow a little faster. And that's a huge thing, but realize you're still trading your time for your money when you're flipping unless you have business systems in place to where you're not having to do a big chunk of the work. And even then, when you're flipping, it's still active, because there's problems to solve that other people can't solve.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really, really important. Tell me a little bit about how you guys fund your deals. Larry, Janet, I'll start with you guys. How do you guys typically go about the funding aspect on your flip side, and then also your holds and things like that? And you guys, I think, lend as well, too, right? You guys lend out to other flippers. And what do you think makes a good lender as well? I think that's important because, a lot of people, there's so much capital out there, but there's not, there's lenders that aren't good. There's lenders that are great. And, if they don't, there's important aspects of that. Can you kind of explain what makes a good lender and how you guys raise your capital for your deals?
So a couple great lending experiences we had. Some of our probably our first 2 or 3 flips we ever did in our career, we used Bruce Norris and Norris Group Hard Money. Not only did he have reasonable standard terms, but we had the guy's a flipper himself. So look for if you are using hard money, which I think is an excellent idea for anybody when they're getting started, you're going to have that second set of eyes that are protecting their money, which of course protects you. So I would always recommend start with hard money for your first 2 flips. While you're doing that, look for cheaper funds. We've done really well finding a couple whales, you might want to call them. They're people that are really well off that earn their money outside of this industry. So you'll meet a lot of investors, I think, that'll ask around here, anybody have lazy money, have tired money? This is for us, this is the wrong place to be looking for money to fund your deals. You should be looking for money to fund your deals in something that you really enjoy. So, like for instance, Janet has been participating in the Orange County Philharmonic Society for 9 years or so. She volunteers. She's helped run our local chapter. That happens to be an organization that raises money and does fundraisers to buy musical instruments for the schools, which can't afford to fund their own musical programs. Who do you think you'd meet in a program like that? You're going to meet a lot of folks that have free time, that oftentimes are successful and maybe appreciate good music. She grew up in a musical family. She's a great pianist and a singer. She sang in the Sydney Opera House with a choir. She rules.
You're going to give us a demonstration right now?
So, in the transition on that is you don't go there, don't do these volunteer activities looking for money. You go there to volunteer and to help. You really show up to volunteer and help, but you're going to make friends, and your friends are going to say, "What are you guys up to?" And as flippers, you kind of have some interesting stories. Holy cow, you should see these 2 projects we just got. Really? Well, this dentist is super interested in what we're doing. He's a dentist. He'd love to hear about hitting a hammer. And so you'll get people that'll start prying out the details of what your business is about. And after a little while, then that might finally make sense as, sometimes I partner with folks, or I may be able to get your money working because I've used all mine up and I want to buy 2 more houses that are amazing deals. They'll be like, yes, please tell me about your deals when you have them. Those types of folks usually don't know what the word points is also. And I'm not saying take advantage of anybody. Pay them a good rate that they can't get anywhere else. But you don't need to say, I'll give you, 7%, 9%, 10%, and 3 points. Or they'd be happy with the 7, 8, or 9, whatever makes sense for them. So that's how we worked with funders, starting first with hard money because we had that backup set of eyes to keep an eye on us, make sure we didn't do something stupid. And while we're working with hard money lenders, start on other paths to find just private, old, regular professionals that could put their money.
I think that's important to understand. Like most hard money lenders are professional lenders in the business of doing this, and they can keep you out of trouble, like you mentioned, where they're going to look at that deal, and if it's not a good deal, they're not going to fund it.
Right.
So who here is looking for money for deals right now? Anybody in the room looking for money? Okay, a couple people. And who is a lender in the room? I know we have Travis in the back here. We got a couple. We got the guys from Pacific over here. Matt, what's up? Travis. Travis actually sponsored our FIBI South Bay, our FIBI corporate event the other day. So thanks for coming. And I met Matt out in Seattle for like the third time. So there's you start developing relationships with the different people that have capital sources in the room, and they become resources for you. And like you said, develop those other relationships with the people with cheaper capital in different ways, and you can really, kick butt with the right resources. So, Matt and Mercedes, how do you guys go about raising your guys' capital, and how do you do
We've
that?
got a bunch of different ways, and not one of them is an actual conventional bank, right? We have our own fund, so we are able to fund a lot of our own stuff. We use the sellers' funds a lot, so we do a lot of seller financing type deals. We do. Mercedes has access to great for our end buyers, a structure of where they can kind of fund the whole thing themselves, and then she can turn around and cash out, refi them all the way out. So
we also have repeat private lenders.
Well, everything he said, that was brilliant,
yeah.
Larry. That was perfect. We've done that, and I didn't realize we were doing it. I was like, yeah, that's right. And showing up not at real estate events, I think, is really, really key. That's where I sold a lot of your properties, Matt. When I first got started, I would go to the Chamber of Commerce, and they'd ask you to introduce yourself, and I would just say, "Hi, my name is Matt, and I show busy professionals how to build cash-flowing portfolios in their spare time. I got a great property, it's going to give you 12% cash-on-cash returns. Seller financing is in place. If you'd like more property or information on this, meet me in the back room. I'll be glad to give you a flyer." I've said that more than once also. So, but I did that over at non-real estate events and some sort of speech or dialogue like that. It really, there's a lot more money in those non-real estate rooms than I think than there are in the real estate rooms. But it's never a money problem. It's just an idea problem. And I just think it's just, there's no limit to it. We got a great credit card company. We can get up on $150,000 in credit. And so we have some of our clients are deploying that and then cash out refining with a conventional loan, getting their money, all of their money back, paying all their credit cards back, and then go out and do it again and just keep that rotation going. So there's all kinds of different creative ways to do it. Like I said, I think the greatest way to find capital, the greatest way to find money is to go out and find the opportunity first and get control of it. Go find a property that's discounted, get it under contract, and you've got more power now in the transaction than the person with the money. The money is the commodity. Being able to find the deal, that's where the value is. So I would say to everybody, if you're having trouble finding money, it's not that you're having trouble finding money. You don't have a deal that anyone wants to give you their money for.
Do you guys use both debt and equity, or at this point are you guys just using debt now? You no longer have equity partners on the deal?
Everything that we buy is just us. We never have partners on our deals. A lot of it is, if there's a partner, it's the seller, and it's seller financing. But we get really creative. We think outside the box because I know we're going to close within 30 to 60 days, if anything. So, we don't do equity partners anymore.
What about you guys?
We did definitely do some equity partners at the beginning, mainly because they got such great conventional financing. I would think that we have right now 3 of our long-term houses locked in at 3%. So we did finance that way, but not very many. One of the greatest things about our private financing was when we were buying, we were funding 100% of the purchase and 100% of the rehab. They barely even asked questions. They never even went and saw the property. It's just, again, it's all about building that trust. And there has certainly been times when they made money and we did not. But you would never, ever short your money person, or that will spread like wildfire. You can't ever do that. But again, like you were saying, there's so many different ways, and it changes over time. We started with hard money. I would still use hard money today if the deal was right. It doesn't matter. If everybody's winning in the situation and it's a good deal, do the deal. And finding the deal is the hardest part. A couple years ago, we decided that we were going to get some blanket financing where we took 10 rental properties and put them under one loan. But I think what the cool thing for us was our bank had never done that kind of a loan ever at that time, Pacific Premier, and I just noticed they're right around the corner. And we helped them structure it, and they helped us get it, and we got it done, and it's a great loan.
It's like a standard commercial. It's like a standard commercial loan, but instead of an apartment building, they took 10 houses. And that terms are mostly the same.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting right now that currently in the debt world, traditional rates are going up. But who saw today the Fed raised the rate by 25 basis points, right? So the traditional rates are going up, and private money rates are going down because all the private money. How many private money lenders do we have in this room? Look, these guys are all killing each other, cutting each other's throat to get your deal, right? So when you look at the spread right now between private money and traditional money or bank money, that spread difference is so low. The cost when you look at that over the course of the deal, it's minimal. So don't be afraid by hard money. Like if you're just getting ready to get started, I love the idea that you get an extra set of your eyes to look at your deal. But really, when you put it on a pro forma, it's not that much of a difference. And if the deal doesn't, if that's the make or break difference, is that 2 or 3% additional cost you're going to have in financing, it's probably not the right deal in the first place. So speaking of costs, and I think it's interesting here because you guys mentioned that everything you buy, you want to put your eyes on first, versus you guys are buying stuff all over the country. So I want to talk about rehab bids, right? Because that's a real big part of identifying a deal and understanding what the costs are going to be. Talk about how you guys, and why don't you guys go first since you're doing everything remotely. What's your process for when and I love the scripts, Matt, that you talked about and how you're getting someone to open up and talk about, what they're willing to do, how you can help solve their problems. How do you come across with your rehab bids? How do you do that remotely and have numbers that you feel confident with to purchase the property? Yeah.
Well, that's easy. We created a system. And so, we're a little bit different in that in each market, I have anywhere from 1 to 3 teams. So I have 3 contractors go out to one property and bid it, and they all know of each other. We're really big on making sure that I diversify and that they know of each other. So because we operate in volume, when somebody gives us a bid, they're all within the same ballpark. And because of the volume that we do, the number is the number. We've done enough deals with them to know that, okay, this is a house that I'm giving you. This is what it needs. The costs are all pretty much the same. So if you miss something, that's on you, because they know that there's a good chance they're going to get the next deal. So they allow themselves a cushion, but I've never had a problem with a contractor. I think we do 10 to 15 deals a month. I think in 10 years, I've had maybe 2 problems. And there was something that we couldn't even foresee. Like it didn't even come up on the inspection. So our answer is we get bids spot on because they know that we're repeat business and that we operate in volume.
So is that your process where you'll get a home inspection done and then give that inspection report to the contractors and let them bid the repairs?
No, all of our contractors are... all of the other way around, exactly. All of our contractors are general contractors. They are my home inspection, and they give me a bid. And then after they do the rehab and it's done, then we do a home inspection. And then when we sell our property, there's another inspection done by my buyer.
Interesting. What about you guys? What's your process?
Do you guys use a standard materials list, that kind of a rehab, or they're all this?
It's sort of just, but being spread out so far across the country, like to have those standard materials available in every single market, it's a little difficult.
So talk about what that means. I think that's interesting for everyone. Yeah. Go ahead, Janet.
So I was asking because we have a very different business. Standard materials means that pretty much every house you remodel the exact same thing. Same countertops, same faucets, same lights, so that your contractor goes to Home Depot or wherever you like to shop, and they always buy those specific things. So you don't even have to make a list for them. We're so opposite that, it's funny. We specifically design each house individually. We do not operate in volume. That's why we go to the property. That's just our personality. That's how we like to operate. We never wanted employees. We never wanted to run a big business. So we'll go to the property before we close escrow, and we walk through it. I usually take pictures, and he starts writing down, and we have our checklist. Here's what are you going to do to the outside, the kitchen, the bathroom, the whole usual stuff.
Door counts.
Doorknob counts.
Square footage.
And we love to design for the house. So if it's a Spanish house, we design Spanish. If it's mid-century, there's just a variety of materials. I am a huge fan of buying products online because half the time you're not paying tax and, you're shipping, and then I don't waste my time going out to the stores. So before escrow closes, we'll have our rehab list. It's in a full checklist form that we fill in what we think it's going to cost, and then we have literally share the document from Drive with our contractor, and he bids it right in our sheet. So certainly sometimes things are missed. There's always, things, let's, change this up or whatnot. But generally we'll have a bid by the time we close escrow so we can start right away. That's how we do it. Do you want to add anything?
No, it's good. We do a lot of this. I mean, our stuff is rental properties, so we have the same types of materials on everything's like two-tone gray and white interior, exactly the same,
right.
Countertops and backsplashes and everything else. And so we have a Lowe's corporate account that we go get all the Lowe's SKU numbers, and we own the management company, so we are the contractors, and so they don't touch any of the materials. Literally, we have it waiting for them at Lowe's on a pallet with all the materials for the entire job already pre-ordered, except for maybe a couple $100 of missed items each time that they go back, and they'll give our rehab manager, which is basically the contractor of the job, he'll go give them a list of SKU numbers and say, I'm missing these items, and he'll go back and look at the inventory and say, wait a minute, you don't need those extra tile. You had that from the last job. Go get it from there, left over. And it cuts down on a lot, and we control the materials. And so most contractors also bid based on how much the materials bids are a lot of times. If they're looking at what your materials costs are, they're looking at saying, okay, what is my labor in comparison to that as well? And so we'll go through and take that bid and make it 80% on the next tab over and show them that materials bid instead, so that way we get a little bit of a better discount and more negotiating with the contractors, because we have a rehab manager managing the actual guys doing the job. That rehab manager controls all materials. And so it's cookie cutter like that, but there's always little items, and we bill it all through the management software and things like that, and it works really well. But there's always issues. There's going to always something that happens.
By the way, I just want to I know this probably sounds intimidating to a lot of people in the room, right? Because these guys got these systems. It's the same system that you need if you're just getting started. The difference is that you just do all of these jobs. Right? So you have to have that same kind of system. And then over time, what happens is you start getting bigger and bigger. You can start breaking pieces off to other people to handle that job. But I think it's important as you're listening, just know that all these jobs are important. You're just going to end up doing all of them at first until you start finding some leverage with other people.
And you should do all of them at first, because
Absolutely.
How are you going to know?
How are you going to learn? Absolutely.
What their contractor's telling you, or how are you going to know how to rent up a property, or screen a tenant, or fill out the lease properly, or know the laws unless you've done it? And you don't have to have a computer system. Get a pen and a paper. That's how we did it. We had a legal paper with just lines on it, and we took our folder around with us everywhere. So don't start by finding the systems. Don't start with your your business card and your entity and all that baloney. Just get the deal. Partner if you have to. It really
helps
to
do checklist. I'll go off with what you said. Yeah, when I first started and I was walking, properties here in LA, for me it was all checklist, and this was before the Home Depot SKU things and any of that. It was for me a checklist, and at the end of the day, what was my goal? And my goal was to make as much money as possible with spending as little on materials. And when I started, my dad was the guy laying the tile. So, we learned from the very beginning. I know exactly how much square footage is needed for, this particular kitchen. And that's important. So now I'm able to do these systems because I know all of that. I know how much paint costs. I know how much a doorknob costs. And I know the difference of a door in Memphis than a door in Indianapolis. So you're going to learn that. And the same thing is for here. If you're doing it here, you need to know what a high-end doorknob costs and what a standard doorknob is. That's your checklist. It's going to go on your checklist.
I think it's important understanding that also when you're looking at like the flip business like this, to be able to make sure that when you're writing your numbers down, when you're going through all the detail of all the costs and things like that, make sure the flips that you're doing are scalable. Meaning after a while, you want to be able to build labor time into every single deal for all the different parts of the deal that you have to do. In the beginning, like Janet's saying, you have to do it all. You have to know everything, because you can't set the system up in the right quality control and ask the right questions without knowing it. But realize, hey, if I can pay somebody, $250 for this, $1,000 for this, $500 for this. Now you can do triple the amount of deals because you've set that up. That would be like the end goal, unless you're ready to just retire because you've made too much money flipping and now you're like, okay, I don't need to do the flips anymore. But if you want to keep that going and not do the work for it, try to look at it that way and say, does this deal work if I outsourced all the labor? Is that scalable in that manner? And it may not be. Sometimes it's difficult to do that. So, question here.
A mentor once shared with me, Matt, and I think it's really important. There are people out there that love to do what you hate. And what Matt and I did is one of the reasons, going back to the beginning of this conversation, is we've divided and delegated to each other what the other doesn't like to do. And the same thing goes with the flip. So if there's things in, a flip that you don't like to do or know you're not good at it, you're going to learn that it makes more sense to hire somebody, outsource that. And there's so many ways to outsource things in today's world. So, don't get stuck doing something that you don't want to do or you don't like to do, because I guarantee you it's going to cost you more money.
The lazier you are, the more successful you're going to be in business. So as long as you can outsource everything, Yes.
And Matt, we want to get to your question, but you said something. You said something real quick. Do flippers ever retire, though?
Oh, I was going to say that too. I like you, Larry.
I don't. It's hard. You get addicted to the deal. They call it real estate crash.
Yeah, I was thinking nobody has ever retired flipping properties. That's what I was thinking.
Once you see the deals, you're done. But Steve?
I had a question about for the remote locations that you guys are operating. When you guys are, maybe not now, but when you guys are first starting out, how would you guys kind of keep tabs on what was happening? Did you guys have to fly out there constantly? Or did you have, before entering the market, get enough deals in place such that you could hire somebody or have somebody on?
Good question.
Can you repeat the question, by the way?
Yeah, so you're asking, when you get started, how do you keep in tabs on the people on the ground and make sure that they're doing the work? Did I understand that correctly? Remotely. So I'm going to be a diplomat and answer the question that I want to answer, but I'm going to get to your answer. Is that when people ask me, how do we pick our markets? How did we end up in the 10 markets that we're in? And they're listening for, okay, are you focused on job growth? Are you focused on migration? Or is it how the political environment is going on in that city? Everyone's always, because those are kind of the basic economic factors that most economists and investors will look at. And they're important. But what comes first is the relationship first. So we're in our 10 markets because of what the relationship that was built there first. So there was a high degree of trust in the beginning. And so, yeah, we did a lot from trust, not necessarily going out, calling somebody up through a Google search, hiring them, and then hoping and praying that they're going to do their job, right? So we picked all of our markets through the relationships first, the economics are second.
Notice that we started with our own properties. So we were kind of the guinea pigs in our own markets with that team. So they didn't really, they didn't mess with us. But what I can tell you is that the teams that didn't, they weeded themselves out. Yeah, the ones that could not, hold up to our level, or, however you want to say that, they just weeded themselves out. They couldn't perform, and they couldn't keep one.
The next level of where we really saw the performance increase was when someone talks about diversifying a portfolio, they're talking about diversifying the asset class, they're talking about diversifying the location. I think you should, when you get to a certain level, you need to diversify your teams as well. As Mercedes had mentioned, we make sure we have at least 2 teams in each market, and we make sure that they know about each other. And not in an evil way, but it does increase performance, it does decrease the expenses, and just that alone, and knowing that we close and we're going to do more business and we continue to do more business. We've been doing this we're coming up on our 10th year, and that volume is that keeps everybody in line for the most part. But in the beginning, it was the relationships first, economic second.
So you guys knew somebody there that you guys could trust to help watch over?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
I would even say not that you knew someone there. You found someone there, built a relationship with them, and then you had a system in place for them.
Typically, it was a little bit unfair, and I don't know if this is really great advice or advice that is applicable that you could use. But going back to this relationships that we built at this Nouveau Riche school, I mean, we had people, 30,000 people, students at one time would all come and converge on Glendale, Arizona. And boy, you met somebody. Like, we had met 3 people that were crushing it in Indianapolis. And then we went out and drank a little too much with them and became really good friends, and had the same taste in bad jokes, and all of a sudden you're buddies, and now you really trust them. That's how those relationships were built. So it could happen if you went out there and built them in that market, sure. But I think everybody here knows somebody in a different state. That could be a good place to start, that would be open to working with you. I think start with the people you already know. I wouldn't focus so much on the people that you don't know and trying to create relationships and force relationships.
Is there a system for bad jokes and excessive alcohol?
Stick around at 9:00. Well, I'll show you how it works.
Right. That system will come into play at North Italia. Well played. Yeah, go ahead.
Who are the main team players that you're looking for initially when you're starting to build a team?
So the most important for me is a property manager, because at the end of the day, you can have a great property, but if that property manager cannot get that property to perform, it doesn't matter how great your property is. So for us, it's a property manager, and in each market, I have the property manager, the acquisition, a rehab guy, my main contractor, and then a maintenance. I always on the side have my title people. I'm very faithful to my title company, and I'm also very faithful to my real estate agent who runs my comps for rental comps and for like sales comps.
It's amazing how quickly a bad property manager can lose you money. It really is.
Mercedes, what's a rehab guy and what's a contractor? You said you have
the
both.
Same person. Yeah, same person. So it's pretty much a property manager, a contractor, and a realtor. It comprises a team, and then we have a couple people that will kind of work with both. Yeah.
Right. What about you? Do you guys have any other? Because you guys are a little more hands-on. So in your hands-on world, who are the people that you rely on the most?
So we enjoy the hands-on business, actually. The designing, the figuring out of how to make this look beautiful and different than anything we've done before. We've had an interesting journey with working with contractors that choose to live in 109-degree heat. We have learned a lot about contractors. They tend to start. There's a natural progression of a contractor has a life cycle. And real quick, another thing interesting about them, they have wonderful schedules. If they don't want to show up till 10, it's sweet. They can, and they can take any day off they'd like. So that's kind of nice. They have that freedom. The contractor life cycle is. I'm jealous, right? So don't get frustrated anymore. Get jealous. The life cycle of a contractor is they start wonderful, and you'll get your best price and your best service out of them at the beginning of your relationship, and then it'll slowly go down. Hopefully it's not a reverse exponential, and it's a long, gentle ride. But by the end of the journey, it's time to move on. And they're ready to move on. We're ready to move on. We're not working anymore together. To earn neither of us were earning any money or whatever it ends up being. It just doesn't work. And I just
question.
Yeah, I know. I just ran off on something that had nothing to do with the question.
Well, I think you answered it because you talked about your most important. And it sounds like the position
our
you're
team.
Always recruiting for is contractors, right? Because these aren't lifelong relationships in your world. These are temporary relationships.
David, 2 years ago we became our own GC. We started GCing ourselves. We bring our own subcontractors.
Did you not have enough to do, so you decided to take on the GC as well?
We didn't, and actually the projects went smoother and easier. We've become acquainted with a ton of good subcontractors. You always keep your subcontractor numbers. You guys should have a good list of every contractor you come across in your market, and you keep a nice big spreadsheet of everybody, and you can filter by plumber. Okay, you know what? I've got 9 to call. Or whatever it is, build your list of contractors, not just of agents and things. So we started subcontracting our GCing ourselves. That's been great. We have I list and sell the stuff myself, so we don't have agent partners other than ones that I'll buy properties from. Other partners that we have or team we have is our own in-house. We have one person who works for us, Kathy. Kathy is our property manager. We've taught her property management. So she's really she handles all of the rentals. She doesn't touch the flip business. And that's it. It's just 3 of us. We're lean.
Do you give the listing back to an agent who brings you a deal?
I'll try not to, but if they ask for it, I will. So I won't bring it up.
We don't take the commission, though. We never, ever, if we're buying a house, we say you represent us.
Oh, yeah, David, if you have a listing.
We never take a commission on a buy. Ever.
Got it.
For sure, yeah. If you have a listing, I like your listing. Please, will you represent me? I want you to double end that one.
The other way we've done too is like we can buy it for this price if you don't sell it for us. But if you want the listing, that's awesome. Then we'll just knock it back a little bit. Knock it back a little bit.
Right.
What
was your question?
Your rehabbers that you say you guys have, do they already know that's your property, that it can't go above a certain rehab cost per square foot? So when they give you the bid, they all know they have to be within a certain amount?
I was just going to say...
Repeat the question.
So he's asking, with our contractors, do they have a certain amount that they know they can't exceed? Is that right? Yes, but it does vary from each property. Because we're flipping to cash flowing investors, we're reverse engineering almost every single deal back from the ROI that our customer is going to receive. Right? So if we buy really good, we might be able to put a little bit more rehab into it, right? If it's the other way around, then we're going to be really strict and tight and make sure that the contractor comes right in on budget. But we do have an all-in price, we call it, our purchase plus our rehab price. And as long as we can keep it there, we know we can still deliver the return for the customer.
And still make a profit.
Do you guys,
of course,
and then
we
do
put
you
our profit
property
in there
manage?
too.
do you guys property manage that rental for them, for your investor?
We have someone in the office that manages the property managers. The property managers don't work for us directly, but we have someone that manages the property managers. Yeah.
So we've had trouble with, let's say I have $7,000 to redo all the floors in beautiful tile. I wouldn't be surprised if I talked to the tile guy and said, I have $7,000 to do this job. You can't go above that. I'm pretty sure the job's going to come in at $7,000. So there's a balance there. You don't want to necessarily let them know what your budget is. Usually we let them decide the price. Sometimes even subcontractors or contractors will say, just tell me what you want to pay. And I think that's usually a trap too. And they don't mean to do it on purpose. Sometimes they just don't want to do the paperwork to figure out the cost of their work. And I usually put it back onto them. I don't understand your job and the skill and all the years you've taken to do it. You need to tell me what's fair for you. If it works for me, I look forward to working together.
And vetting these different team members and contractors and property managers, and you have to understand what questions to ask and how they cost you money. So like our property managers, I went through 5, and now I have my own, and because I have my own systems and everything in place for collections, for service calls, for investor communication, for accounting, for marketing and leasing, and you just have specific procedures. And I find it's easier to have, I can go through and control a lot more and do a lot more deals because I have a lot more team members that help with that piece that work for me, that I can say, I don't want you to do the property management today. I need you to go take a look at this property because I need this done right now. And sometimes that power of having that extra employee, that extra person that's working with you can be really, really valuable. But for property managers, it's how do they cost you money? How do they do the delinquencies? How do they go and do the collections? How do they vet a tenant on qualification? On contractors, do you write down your contracts in detail with them? How do they like getting paid? Are you gonna, are they okay getting paid last after final inspection and making sure they do that punch list? And is that communicated to them up front? Are they coming in way outside of the realm for all these other things? And I had a contractor tell me the other day, I don't write down numbers. It's about $80,000 for this. And I was like, you don't write down numbers, so then we're going to have a 2-hour meeting and we're going to write down all the numbers while I take notes and ask you questions, because I'm not doing any deals without numbers. So I'm like, I'm an accountant. You know what you're asking me right now? It's impossible, So, but these are the types of things that you have to learn how to vet your team members, so you're asking the right questions. Because in the beginning, I'm telling you, property managers I got a few times. They totally gave me up. I'm sitting there in the driving with them, going, "You guys are amazing. I love you. 50 grand of theft later, I realized they sucked, And so, like, these are the things that happen to you if you don't know how to vet your people, or could happen to you. And so get the right advice from the people that have done it, have gone through that stuff. Ask them for questions. Go on Bigger Pockets and say, how do I vet a contractor? How do I vet a property manager? And run through every question you can think of, and do that with 10 people and see what they say. Call them off a Yelp and ask those questions and see how they work, So, any other questions here? Go back here in the back and then we'll come back to you. How do you flip houses when the market's going down?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
we started
Good question.
We buy low.
We buy lower.
So
I mean, for every market, if it's up or down, there's a respective low price to buy at and a higher price to sell at. So that's it. And sometimes there's a little bit of delay. Sometimes the market takes a little bit to catch up. So there's maybe a 6-month lull where the Joe consumer had to get embrace reality that maybe my house is not worth what it was. So there's a little bit of a lag there, but once that sets in, there's a respective low price and relevant low price to buy, relevant high price to sell.
Yeah, it's interesting because we hadn't thought necessarily about that specifically until today. So we were discussing the question, and when we first started buying in 2007, 8, and 9, well, really more this 8 and 9, we were buying in mind that at that time the market was dropping about 2% per month. So we would take that into account, run it out 6 months or whatever we thought the property would be at that time. Now we're buying strictly on solds within the last month or 2 months. We never, I won't price higher than that. We've done that a couple of times and been burned. But now I'm not thinking, the market's going to be in 6 months, 2% higher each month or any particular number. We just strictly go off of what's sold.
Stay conservative on the sales side.
We're very conservative now,
upmarket,
yes.
I'd also add to that, hold more than you sell. So if you're buying for cash flow, it doesn't really matter what happens to the value.
Correct.
Every investor in here that's been doing this longer than 20 years will agree that they wish they would have held more and sold less, right? And so I think that's how you hedge against market fluctuations, is you're taking some off the table for yourself and then making sure that they cash flow.
Yeah. To get more specific about your question, so literally buying in 2007, today's our ARV. I'm about to buy this house today. If it was fixed, let's say it's worth $200,000. So here's what you want to do in a declining market. Find out from agents, have them run a report, find out on Zillow or anywhere that gives market data per region, what is the monthly decline in that region. At the time, it was averaging 1 to 3%. So I think we took in the middle, 2%. Today's our ARV is $200,000. We expect to hold it for 6 months. So 6 months from now, it's going to be 6 months of 2% less is what we're going to have to sell it for. Then your offer will be based on that new lower amount of because you'll know you'll be selling it for less. It's a down market.
And it's important to be in and out that quick. And if you're doing really well, you can be in and out in 4 months. It depends on how much of a rehab and how fast you get the permitting in the cities and things like that. But you want to project that timing, difference.
I'd also say, especially because so many people here in Los Angeles, most of these, you guys are talking about fixing and flipping houses that are a couple of $100,000, right? You're probably thinking about fixing and flipping a house that might be hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million to do. If you're in a declining market, you need to make sure that if you can't sell the property, you can cash flow it and hold on to the property when you're at the top of the market like this. Because what you don't want to be is somehow you misestimate what the value is going to be, and now all of a sudden you have to rent it, and every month that you're holding it and you're renting it, it's costing you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month. So I think that's an important metric to put in your pro forma right now when you're putting a number out, is if you can't sell it, if your 2% numbers are off, and sometimes even your pricing may be right, but people just can't get a loan. Like all of a sudden buyers just disappear for short periods of time. Make sure right now at this point in the market that if you buy it and you hold it, you can hold it at least neutral cash flow, if not positive cash flow would be better.
Well, it's important to be really, really aware and just super cognizant of what your goal is. So many people just want to do a deal. They want to make a flip happen. if the flip is not there, if the numbers aren't there, if the profits aren't there, you can't make it happen. If whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, figure out that number, figure out that goal, and stick to it. Don't try to make a deal happen in a market that it's not going to happen. I have so many, people that call our office and, say, well, that it's not a deal. Well, it's not a deal for you, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a deal for Matt over here. So just be very aware and cognizant of what your goal is, and whatever deal you have at hand, you got to make sure it's a deal. So keep that in mind.
Question here.
We have 3 kids under 4. Do any of you have children? How old are they? How does that come into play? How do you make decisions?
So you got a crew built in.
Your little hands can get in places.
They're good for getting in attics, underneath crawl spaces. Yeah.
We have a 6-year-old that just graduated from first grade. And so he understands the importance of real estate, and he absolutely understands what cash flow is. He understands that he just doesn't get toys. He has to create a job that's going to produce a cash flow for him to buy a toy.
I love it. That's so awesome. That's so awesome.
That's Daddy that created that. But yeah, my kid knows. He said the other day, I think I want to work at a restaurant. And then he stopped. He says, no, I'm going to own the restaurant. So
that's cool.
That's what my kids do. But
and Daddy bought him a restaurant.
It's I'm very fortunate in that we run our own operation, and so when we had Mateo, it was very important to us that he incorporates into our life, not we incorporated into theirs or his. So we run business, and he knows that business is going to happen. And if I had to bring him here tonight because I didn't have a sitter, he'd be sleeping back there in that couch. So that's kind of how we.
Did you ask that question for a specific reason?
He's got 3 kids right?
Well, no, but I mean, you said, how do you make that work? I think is how you asked the question, or in what context?
Yeah, I mean, they're just at the front of every decision that we make right now. So,
So you're thinking for their future,
we're
or
locking up our funds, our property right now. When I got to pay for 3 kids to go to school and all that kind of stuff, because right now they can't go.
don't lock up your funds. There's 5 people here that raise their hands, said they're private money lenders.
Right.
Find the deal first and use somebody else's money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There is so much money out there, buddy. If you get the deal, you will find money. If it's truly a deal.
Just focus on that part. Don't focus on your money. I don't want you to.
The money will be there, dude. Yeah, just find that deal. Just focus on the
Everybody
marketing.
says that, and it's so true. Yeah, no, it's 100% true. Money will come to you. You'll just attract it if you have good deals.
Call anybody up here if you find a deal. They will, yeah, we will all be like fighting over it.
Don't call us if you want us to watch your 4 kids.
Yeah.
So I have a 3-year-old, and he already has the Robert Kiyosaki Cash Flow for Kids game, and he doesn't know what he's doing yet, but I got him brainwashed already. It's perfect. So
Talk about money around the house.
Yeah.
Don't be that family that we don't talk about money. Don't do that. It doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah, and it's funny, most schools don't teach finance, right? Especially at the elementary school, middle school level. Some high schools are starting to do that, so it's your job as a parent to teach them about cash flow and money and how things work like that. So don't think that that's going to happen in school. It's really important.
And be careful negotiating a deal on the phone, because your kid will use the same negotiating tactics with you that he did. Yeah, it's happened to me. So I think the gentleman has a question over here. You, Steve. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you guys had, earlier on, you guys talked about systems that you guys have in place. You could kind of go into more detail about that. Like, are you guys using off-the-shelf stuff? Are you guys building your own systems? Like, how are you guys managing like tasks? Like, are you guys just writing down checklists every day?
So when you say systems, I think you're probably talking about like technology. What kind of technology do you use to track your process? It's a great question. What are some of your favorite? I know you mentioned CRM and you mentioned Podio. I think you guys both are all 4 of
No,
these.
we're recovering Podio users.
So talk about your
We
tech
broke
that you use
Podio.
on this.
So we use a CRM called REI Solutions, and REI Solutions. It's REI.solutions. There's no .com or .net on it. It's just .solutions. But it has, you can build the tasks. It's full project management inside. You can build all your own tasks, and then they come up as a checklist. You can have those tasks automatically. Every time you check one off, it assigns the next one to the next person that's in your system. So it really is systemized. How we created it initially, when they were saying that you should do everything yourself the first time, it's a little bit painful in the beginning, but you just document step by step what you did, and you literally create your own checklist, and then you can just program it right into your CRM and then start checking things off.
To go on to that, when we first started, we had a legal size manila envelope with prongs in it, and we had handwritten checklists, and we would print them out. And we had a sheet for purchasing, we had a sheet for rehabs, we had a sheet for renting, we had a sheet for selling. And you don't need to spend money on a big system to start with. I would highly recommend not doing that.
Time.
You'd waste time
Because you wouldn't know the system that you're building yet.
Yeah,
You've spent all this time tweaking, doing this light programming that Podio and these systems allow. It could take you 3 weeks. And then realize, we never even do all those steps. I should have.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right.
How long it's taken us with Podio?
Yeah.
Well, no, and it does take time. And then from there we went to Dropbox, right? We would share documents in Dropbox. And then we hired Kathy, and it is painful. I literally hand wrote every step of every process in a notebook. And then I gave it to her, and I said, you get to retype this into our manual in Google Drive, and you make an instruction page and how to do each particular task. Because not only was I not typing that, but that's how she learned it, right? And we learned that from David Finkel, Ultimate Business System. I went to one of his classes, and it was a great idea. And his thought was, build your business as if you're going to sell it. You may not sell your business, but build it as if you are, so you have documents that everybody touches, but that one document is always current. You don't have duplicates. And now we use whatever they call it now, Google Drive. I know they have a file drive, whatever they call it. And we just started using Podio, which is just easier for us. And that's how we've done it, but manually write it, literally.
I think that's the trick, though, right? The whole entire trick to the entire business is documenting every single one of your processes so you can get someone else to duplicate it, or so that you don't go crazy with a billion tasks that need to be done, because there's a billion tasks that need to be done with every house. And so, but it is super painful to do that. But when we did that, it was like the most eye-opening thing in the world. Because you're like, this is easy. I can document everything. And, I'm doing this wrong. Let me change this. You find everything you're doing wrong,
Which, Matt mentioned before, like there are every single deal, there's always going to be something that's unexpected. And usually that happens every single day of every single deal. If you can't get the standard mundane stuff down to a checklist where you don't have to think about it, save your brain power for solving the problems that aren't going to be on your checklist, right? The stuff that you know about, make sure that's simple, and it's just part of your process, and you can keep it very, very simple, systemized.
You're not going to grow until you do it. You had made a little joke about the more successful you get, the lazier you get, but there's some truth to that. Not that it's lazy, but the more successful you get, the less you are actually doing. And it's because you do all of this work up front.
I also think it's important because when something goes wrong, right, if you don't have things written down and something goes wrong, all of a sudden you start questioning, why am I doing this? Versus when you have a checklist, you're like, wow, there's a flaw in our checklist. Let's fix the system so next time it doesn't happen again. It totally changes your mentality when you're operating a system versus you're just kind of on the fly for every single project.
Steve, the only system you should have, the only system anybody who's starting or getting out there right now is some system to make the phone ring with sellers on the other end of that phone. If you have a business card, that's a waste of time. If you've already created your entities, that's a waste of time. You should only be focusing on whatever marketing or whatever method it takes for that phone to ring. And you ask any investor, somebody who's been doing this for 10 years, 5 years, or that first month, the hardest skill or the hardest thing to do in this business is to find that next property you can purchase below market. So that's why they say, it's really the reason why people say don't worry about the money. The money part is easy. The hardest part for all skill levels is just get next place under market. And so that's why you should put the effort in first before any systems, any of these other setup stuff. Don't go custom a logo, none of that junk.
I think there's a question here. You go ahead.
Yeah. This is kind of for all of you that kind of that idea of graduating from hard money into the private money. I totally get that. I think if you can do that, it's obviously cheaper on the money, cost of money. But a question I have for you guys, what do you think about this? Is that a lot of my higher volume flippers are still using us. They still use hard money. And usually they're bringing in somebody else for their down payments. So they're almost doing it with none of their own money. Do you think they're doing that because of like scalability and that's part of their system so they don't have to think about finding more money? Because they're not only doing it in the higher markets like LA, they're doing it in like Sacramento and stuff like that too. So I was kind of curious, why do you think they do that? Do you think it's expedience and not having to think about finding more private money, or is it just a limited amount of private money they can find? Or what do you think that is?
I would say it's probably both. I mean, we always financed 100% of our deals. We never put any of our own money in it to begin with, and we barely do now. I mean, if I can get 100% financing and it cash flows, or I make the money in a flips, absolutely. It's easier. It's just you have peace of mind knowing that they have enough money to pay their bills and all the other things that are going on in their life. Because although we think about real estate 24/7, the majority of the world does not, and they don't even understand the market. When we talk, like for instance, when we talk to a seller, we're like, oh, it's this real estate and it's the market and all this. They never even think about it. They don't even understand where we're coming from. So from a flipper's side or a person that's buying rentals, financing, make it easy. So they're using you because it's easy.
That's what my answer was going to be. It's comfortable to them. There's no reason for them to change. It's getting the job done right now. Yeah. I think if it gets to a point where they need lower costs of money or they find an easier source, they'll use it. But I think right now it's working for them.
And it's very similar to when we're talking to homeowners and providing value in different ways. You're coming in and saying, hey, I got your back in a couple of days or less than a week, and I'll close escrow and be done for it. And if you have borrowers that have consistently gone to you from a lender standpoint, and you got their back and you take care of them and get their deal done. I had a borrower come to me the other day that they're about to wholesale it, and the wholesaler backed out, and they needed to close the next day, and it was like a $150,000 loan, and I'm like, hey, I underwrote it in 5 minutes and was like, hey, I got you. Don't worry about it. I got cash for tomorrow for you. I'll take care of you. That person's not going anywhere else. Like they're like, you just saved my butt on this and made me $30,000 that I was going to lose and make them look really bad to the next person. So that value that a really good lender brings to the table is worth it. Yeah, they could go find other money, which is work. So it's like they're going to either trade their time to work to find those lenders and put it up front, which is worth it over the long run, to build that. But in the reality, like I have investors now that'll give me, all the 10% money I'll ever need, and I raise capital at 8 and 6% from a lot of private investors now because I have all the capital I need at 10. And that took me a long time to develop. But at the same time, like if I didn't have other options for that one larger investor, if I needed a deal done right now, I'm going to hard money to get the deal done because I know they'll perform, if it's a professional company that does it in that area, So that's really the value there is that you'll be there for them when they need you to close a deal.
So you must be good at what you do. That's the answer.
You're part of their system.
By the way, speaking of, I'm the 10% money with Matt, so if you've got more 10% money, just stay away. I think I want all of that money. All right, we only have a couple more minutes left here, so we're gonna wrap this up because we gotta get out of here at 9:00. Let's kind of end with this question, and of course, right now we are at more the end of the cycle. Right, it's been a great run. Talk about like where we're at right now from an economic standpoint, how that's affecting what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and where you think you see your business growing in the next 2 to 3 years if there is some kind of correction. Janet, Larry, why don't you guys go first?
So I think what's helped us have a great relationship and be successful is that we constantly refocus on what our goal is. So we'll have our meetings where we say, this is our goal in 10 years. We want to do this, 5 years, and keep re-looking at that goal. And right now, our goal is and always was to start traveling. And so for us to be able to travel and still have a business, it was all about cash flow. So right now we are starting to sell off a few of our rentals because they've gained so much value. And we're going to use part of that money to pay off some of our loans so we have better cash flow on our rentals. And then the other part of that is just to start lending more because we don't have to be here to lend, period. So that's what we're doing. We're refocusing, selling some of our properties. We bought a flip last week. If they come to us and they make sense, we'll buy them, but that's certainly not what we're focusing on.
Yeah. Sure. So just constantly looking at the idea of selling some of our houses. We're selling about 15% of them. So just taking some off the table. They've appreciated nicely. I'd hate to look back and go, wow, I had to be greedy and I didn't sell any of them if we took a dip. And then the other thing is also how can we make what we're going to keep better? So you hear a lot of talk about granny flats and ADUs. So we have a couple of houses that we're going to keep and that we're going to investigate sticking a second unit in the backyard or converting a garage into an ADU. So that could almost double the income those produce. And just trying to flow with the market, and doing less. We're turning down more deals than ever and just doing the real comfortable, sweet stuff. Just to keep us nimble in case there is a little bit of a correction. I don't see enough indicators of market change soon, but it sure does feel a little frothy, at least here in Southern California.
That's an interesting answer from people that don't have a lot of mouths to feed around your team. From a team that has all kinds of people, I'm curious to hear what your guys' answer is at the same question.
Well, I would say about 18 months ago, we started looking at the entire portfolio, and we started dumping all of the problemed properties. All the management properties.
Culling the herd.
Yeah. And so we were like, let's focus on, we kind of did with this 80-20 analysis. Let's focus on those 20% that is producing most of the income with the minimum amount of headache. And just started reorganizing, restructuring that way. And then we got to our position. So I'd say about 6 months ago, we started focusing heavily on more acquisition from a cash flow perspective. So we're doing a lot more of that. And there was something I was going to say, and it was going to be really compelling and brilliant, and it just left me. Yes, it was going to be life-changing. But this is what I was going to say, is that, there's no indicators that are really pointing to any sort of downturn, at least nothing. But that's kind of where we were last time either. Hindsight is crystal clear. Now we all know what the secondary market was. Back then we didn't have a clue what the secondary market was and what was going on. So if something's going to collapse, it's going to be something like we're just not privy to at this moment. I have a theory, and this is not a political theory. It's more of an economics theory. And I think Trump's ego is so big, he will not allow this country's economic system to fail on his watch. He may leverage the entire future of this country on it so that it doesn't happen during his watch. But I think we got 2.5 years left of some real prosperity while he's in power, because he's just not going to let it happen. That's not going to be part of his legacy. He won't let that happen. So I think we got 2 years. My guess is, if I was going to make a guess, I don't have a crystal ball that could all collapse tomorrow. And but that's what I'm kind of guessing. So we're going full steam ahead for 2 years and take as much advantage as we can.
So your life-changing moment was that Trump has an ego.
Yeah. No, it's just,
that's a news flash to me.
And it's not a feeling or an emotion or opinion. It's just kind of like what's being exhibited, and it's just like, and him being such a finance guy, such a real estate guy, like, if anything is going to succeed on his watch, it's going to be that, right? I just don't feel like he's going to let that happen. And so,
I often have that same conversation with my cash flow buyers. I always say to them, many people come to me and always say, I want to flip. And when we started, our rule of thumb was, flip 4 piles of money, leverage as much as you can without over leveraging, and hold as much as possible. And I mean, that kind of is not only what we practice personally, but this is what I preach every single day to every one of my buyers, because we flip to our buyers that are going to cash flow. So I always say to them, if you can maximize your 10 Freddie and Fannie loans, I am the biggest advocate of that. I will create portfolios for my clients, because I know in 10 years, they're going to be like, that Mercedes girl, she knew what she was talking about. Because I wish, and I've said this before many times, I've fixed and flipped 24 properties in 1 year. I was a mad woman. And I always think, and I flipped them here in LA, what if I would have kept all 24 of those properties? And we still now have a very nice portfolio. It's cash flowing. We're not complaining. We hold notes. But I tell this to my clients. Yes, flip, but hold as much as you can.
I'd rather have those 24 in LA than the 24 we got in Indianapolis. That's for sure.
This is true. But back then, all I wanted was to do the deal. So when I said, don't just go out and do a deal because you want to do a deal, I wanted to do a deal, and I just wanted piles of money.
All right, well, since we've got to get out of here and there's probably food on the counter as it's getting cold, we're going to go ahead and end it right here. Huge thank you. Besides being very informative, being very entertaining tonight, let me get a round of applause for these guys.